Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery preparing to check in on a couple of my buddy worm bins, and there was just one thing I noticed right before I started to roll the camera was that I saw a flying insect over in the younger of the two bins, which by the way today is 100 days of age. Happy 100 days. So I've got my BTI, stuff I haven't even used in maybe a couple months now, that I want to make sure that I apply. Well, it might only be a fluke. If it's a single insect that's just kind of hiding from me over there, so be it. But if I see anything more than just a single flying insect, I'm definitely going to apply the BTI. So down here, these little guys were last checked in on and fed 11 days ago. And at that time, we took these gourds that have been in these systems for 74 days now, and we used my little pocket knife and we opened up the gourds so that perhaps it would help with the breakdown process. And I'll tell you, I've composted gourds in the past. However, in the case with these gourds, they definitely seemed much thicker, the walls, In the past, I've composted gourds with the worms, which eventually made it pretty easy to break them apart and crumble them. And these, I couldn't even make them budge, and that was the reason the knife came out. All right, there's two, there's three, there's even more. And sometimes I wonder, are they hiding in the corrugations of my cardboard? Well, I think it's time to assume the worst. There's another one. And let these little guys know that they're not welcome in here. So I think before we do anything else, since the assumption in this case would typically be, in my case at least, that my target audience for this stuff is somewhere out here near the surface, not buried down deep somewhere, at the bottom of the material in the bin. I think now, before we stir anything up, is the time to apply the BTI. And the BTI is harmless to the worms. It really only interferes with the not even the reproduction of the insects. It's I believe, something to do with their ability to develop to the next stage before they can eventually become a mature flying insect. So it just kind of halts their progress, so they never grow to that next phase in their lives. So now one thing we've done, okay, I should have made a little list for myself. I even thought about, before I get too dirty, writing in here BTI, which we've already done. But the other little checklist item was simply to till up the outer edges. I got into a little kick and I almost forgot about it, but when I reviewed the video from last time, I realized that these were one of the systems where I was following through on this little idea of leaving the outer edges of the systems undisturbed and not tilling into them when we check in. So, sticking to that plan, all we did was we opened up the trench in the middle, we excavated the gourds. That check-in took enough time just with the cutting of the gourds and other things that we probably even benefited from not taking the time to till up the outer edges. Visually, I'm definitely seeing a lot more dry leafy matter that was left behind, but even out here where I've tilled away the top surface, for the most part, I feel here like I've got some crumbly stuff that seems pretty manageable, but this stuff seems like it's kind of on the verge of maybe becoming muddy. And even the sound of it, you can hear that squishiness. So I believe the tilling up of this system is definitely in order. And look at the worms, Here I am thinking to myself, ew, I'm going to have a system that's unmanageable, muddy, gooey junk. What do I do? What do I do? And the worms are thinking to themselves, oh my goodness, how awesome it is to be in this bin over here. Well, it is their 100th day in service, so I don't want to be a party pooper. I'm not going to mess with a good thing. So we've followed through on checklist item number 2, which was to till. But as long as we're tilling, yeah, look at that. We're just going to go for it and see what else is going on. I am pretty sure that it's these two systems here where we've got fairly high populations. The older system, the 143-day-old system, I believe we've got in excess of 3,000 worms. But the interesting thing here in the 100-day-old system is I believe here we might have in excess of 4,000 worms. Here again, I didn't write it down on my board, but I think those were stats I did share with you guys last week. Or not last week, 11 days ago when we last checked in here. So here, you know, that's just my personal preference. I do like it this way. The fact that I can crumble the material here in the slightly older bin is kind of nice, you know. Sometimes I wonder, you know, am I hindering the potential productivity of the system and its ability to break stuff down by, you know, letting things get a little bit drier and seemingly more manageable from my human perspective versus maintaining the material in a way that the worms clearly prefer. Or, I don't know, maybe it's just because this system, I believe, has a slightly higher population in it. So, oh, I almost forgot. Before we space out, one more checklist item. And we just did the tilling too, right? So that's good. But the third checklist item was leaves. So I've, that was the other thing I noticed when we were reviewing the video from last time. Well, when I was reviewing the video from last time. How when we first arrived, the whole top surface was coated with these beautiful leaves. And I got a whole box almost full of my leaves on the ready. So I'm going to bring it even closer just so I don't forget. So I would like to leave today's check-in in such a way that we leave behind a nice top coating of leaves so that next time we come in here again, we can blend in all those nicely seasoned leaves that have just been kind of sitting out on the surface, making the system pretty, and use it as bedding to complement the next feeding. And, you know, as far as bedding goes with this feeding, I have been getting this feeling in some of my systems like I'm crowding myself out of working space by being so generous with the bedding. And I'm wondering if perhaps holding back on the bedding on this go around might be a good idea. I think that's what I'm going to do, just so I don't start finding a pattern a little too late that I've been too generous with the bulking out of my systems and working my way into a situation where I don't really have space enough to do what I like to do, which is to dig deep and make mounds and move a lot of material back and forth in a somewhat carefree fashion without having to worry about spilling it. And that's as simple as that, you know, that's my only thinking. So let's I think yeah, I was still anticipating a couple extra chunks of gourd, and I really, you know, I should really just get totally away from the idea that we're going to see any sort of change to this material as if it, you know, really requires an in-depth investigation at each check-in. How are the gourds doing this time, you know? Same thing with something like this, a mango seed, you know. Perhaps someday if we're just treating it as if it's just background noise, perhaps someday it might surprise us with something interesting and open up or something like that. But for us to always check in on it just seems a bit unnecessary. All right. At least we found a little worm party over here. I'm definitely liking the idea of maybe including a little bit of extra moisture here in the older system. Not so much that it would be as damp as what we see in the 100-day-old system, but still, it does seem fitting to give these little guys the same basic advantage as their buddies over in the neighboring bin, right? So, and you know, as far as all these gourds go, at least one thing I'm going to probably be doing is trying to face the open cavity portion of it upwards so that it becomes sort of a capture. And maybe even this one unusual piece can be somehow kept in a place where it would also have pretty good exposure to the foods that we're giving them. And man, look at this. There's a lot of food in here. So heavy. So we're going to be pretty generous. So really quick, let's follow suit with what we just did there because I like that. It was kind of nice to do a little test drive of what I had in mind, and it does seem to be working well. And yeah, this is definitely going to be the more heavily populated system if you ask me. That's what I want to see right there in the gourds, right? That's what we want to see as far as activity and worms working the stuff. And I think even with the most busy worm traffic, we're still going to see objects that are going to just take pretty much forever. All right, let's press on here. All I want to do is just take a quick gander at how these objects are coming along. And you know, I think I'm going to evict these little guys only because I know that what's coming momentarily is a bunch of frozen food that I'm going to pile on top of them. And I think it's just going to have to happen that way. Man, this is a really big piece. I can see all the stuff that came out of it, all the seeds and stuff. Yeah, this is almost seems like this bin should be unbuddied, so that we can like just spend a lot of time hanging out and checking this system out because it's going to be a fun system to check in on. And after only 100 days, I've only had so many check-ins to visit with them and get accustomed to how much fun it's going to be to regularly come in and see how they're doing. Definitely don't need moisture in here, that's for sure. All right, perhaps yeah, you know what? I'm going to quit trying to give myself different ideas on how to do things more optimally. I think we're just going to press on, and I'm just going to deal with kind of the... Oh, you know what? There we go. Good idea, right? A little bit of coffee. If we sprinkle in coffee, that in a way right there is going to protect any little wormies from any harm that could possibly come of being piled high with a bunch of yummy food. So here we've got potato peel, and I see other things. I see strawberry. There's like a whole strawberry right here. Nice. So hopefully we get equal shares. I see another strawberry over there, or at least parts of strawberries over there. There we go. Let's give these guys a nice big piece too. Mainly potato peel from what I can tell. Oh no, there's chunks of cantaloupe in here too. Ah, nice feeding. Very nice feeding. And it even comes complete with a little bit of frost. So perhaps the frost goes in here, and I think just sticking with the existing bedding that's already in here without adding more is probably a smart way to play it. But let's not forget, we'd like to, I think what's directly beneath all this stuff is good as far as moisture goes, but let's not forget, we were thinking of maybe following through here a little bit with just adding a little bit more moisture, perhaps a little more than I normally would, but only because of the fact that the buddy bin is pretty damp. I'm getting this feeling of, you know, trying to help these systems keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. This probably wouldn't become my norm or my routine as far as keeping levels at a certain moisture level. Although I have seen the benefits of having systems maintained pretty damp. I ran a couple, what was it, a couple months ago, I think at this point, I ran a system that I thought was going to operate as sort of a breeding bin. Not sure how well that worked, but it was high moisture content, very high moisture content, and I don't know if there was much breeding, but I definitely saw very chubby worms, which I liked a lot. So I've still got my checklist item of adding a top dressing of leaves out across the top surface here. But I was just recommended of something else I probably should have put on the list, because I was thinking to myself, oh, I set up my grit over there on the side. I was going to apply a little bit of that too. But at this point, since we've covered up the feeding zone in the older system, I'm certainly not going to excavate it to drop grit in, but we can always be a little deviant from our norms, right? Because typically I'll apply the grit right to the food itself. I don't think the worms care where they find their grit. So we can just throw it out here for them. And it's going to be a nice little thing to go hand in hand with this awesome top coating of yummy leaves that they're going to get too. So this is a great opportunity for me to use these leaves to return some of this lovely material right back down into the bins. Yeah, how's that? That's a good way to go. Let's try to keep my clean hand clean, shall we? This is usually like here at the 11th hour when the video is almost done is when I finally decide that I'm going to get my nice clean hand filthy. And then when the chicken is done, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, oh my goodness, how am I going to turn the camera off? My hands are filthy. I guess if I was using my newer GoPro, I could just use voice commands. All right, we're done here. Let's not dawdle with returning these little guys to the shelf, letting them resume their duties, and hopefully they're going to enjoy that lovely meal that we just gave them. Bubble wrap over there, a plastic bag over here, and the plastic bag's pretty easy to deform a little bit. So I'm thinking here, I don't want to be a party pooper, you know, but I still think the system would benefit from possibly kicking off a little bit of its moisture. So why not set it up in such a way that it can maybe do a little bit of that around the edges. And the cardboard here on top is basically for shade. I don't know, perhaps I should have added more of this. Perhaps I should get rid of the cardboard. Maybe they're just living in that and it's a problem I'm creating myself. I don't know. We'll definitely monitor it and see where things go and, you know, react accordingly. So that's it for the video, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please just consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.